Welcome. It says here that I should read this and say good morning and welcome, but I think I'll say good afternoon. And welcome to the 44th CALLERLAB Convention in Mesa, Arizona. Today is, I'm told, the 10th of April in 2017, and this is the, what's the name of this session? Mastering Your Craft session. And I am Jim Mayo. I'll serve as the moderator for this session, and our panelist today is Jon Jones. And we have concluded together that between us we probably have more years of experience in the square dance activity than any other session leaders at this convention. If you combine the two of them together. I've been at it for 70 years and he's been at it for 62. So that adds up to a pretty good total. The session that we're doing today is to talk about what the dancers should be doing in terms of mastering their craft. And it has to do with how we dance and how to make our dancing better, both as an experience for us and as we interact with other people on the dance floor and in the square dance activity. I'm very pleased to be able to share in this session because I've been interested for a very long time in good quality dancing. I prided myself on being a good dancer back when that was a very important thing. And I have been very much interested as a caller and as a teacher of dancers in developing not only their familiarity and expertise with the technology of dancing, the mastering of the calls and how technically to execute them accurately, although that is a significant part of mastering your craft. But I was particularly happy to be part of an experience that happened first at the New England Square Dance Convention. I was invited in 1997 to lead a session on dancing smoothness. We didn't know exactly how well it would be received, and another caller, Yikes Cameron from New Hampshire, joined me in presenting a 1-hour dancing clinic at this convention. There were something like 8,000 people at the convention, and we had a prime spot at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. Fortunately, it gave us a pretty big hall because they weren't doing much else on Saturday morning. And to our considerable surprise, 25 squares were standing in the hall at 10 o'clock, ready to experience dancing smoothness and find out more what it meant. We were surprised. The convention committee was surprised because they had run out of space and there was still a crowd at the door. The message that came through to us eventually is, wow, the dancers really would like to dance smoothly. They'd like to know what that means and how they can experience it, how they can be part of dancing smoothness. We've done a fair amount of work, and I did not, actually I think the year I'm describing was 1996, because the next year I got my act together and the flyer that you have, the trifold handout, was prepared to be given to the dancers at that session. And it pretty much described what it is that we were talking about and the factors that enter into dancing smoothness. It also notes that there is more than dancing involved in quality dancing. The other subjects that you see here are courtesy, timing, accepted styles, and consideration for others. Only a couple of those have to do with the actual dancing. Many of the factors in mastering the craft of dancing is how you interact with the others, particularly when you're dancing in square dancing, and you are in fact interacting with others. Not only the 4 in your, or 8 in your square, but the rest of the floor and how you move with respect to them, how you carry yourself as you are dancing. And we provided a 4-tip program that demonstrated each of the aspects, or each one a separate aspect of the things we were talking about. And I have the program that I used for myself, and I always wrote out programs for dances. I recently gave to the University of New Hampshire History Department a collection of 50 years of programs for dances I had called. I had a written program for every dance that I ever called. And I had the entire collection and turned it over to them. It's a stack about that high. But the program that I wrote out for this one, and Yikes and I alternated on the tips. But the first tip we identified as styling and the way we move. The difference between dancing and walking in turns, a forearm and courtesy and swing, how you counterbalance each other in those turns. It's not enough to walk individually around each other. There's an interaction between dancers at that point. The other message in here is dance, don't scramble. Help your neighbor, be aware of the others in a set. And one of the things that I fear has diminished, if not completely disappeared, is the motions required of the inactive dancers. If you have the heads pass through and separate around one end of the center, the sides have a lot of dancing to do there. It's not something where you stand there like a rock in the post and say, go ahead and get around me if you can. It's a community enterprise. The whole square takes part, even though the call is directed only at the heads. And that was the topic of our first tip. The second tip, we talked about position and accuracy in a turn through. It's a half a turn and walk by. There is some interaction between dancers on that too. Slide through, we had to show the different ways of getting past each other and turning. Spin the top still gives people trouble, except after a swing through. If you call a spin the top, heads couples spin the top, there's going to be a scramble, in part because we don't do it that often. Cast off, any 3/4 turn is difficult for dancers to measure. They have trouble identifying just how far is 3/4. At 270 degrees, it's tough to come by. In the third tip, we talked about the styling of particular calls, 8 chain throughs. The courtesy turns at the end. A lot of people don't bother to do that. They just sort of turn themselves around and get headed back the other direction. On a center's end, who holds on to who and which hand goes on top? Where is the pivot point? Is it the end dancer? Is it halfway between the end two people? All of these are things that experience, at least back in the old days, used to build. Dancers knew the answers to those questions. But in those days, even then, we were teaching so many calls that we often didn't take the time to talk about the styling aspects of those calls. It was just enough, well, get around to the right place, and if you're here, then you did it right. What we were trying to sell in this program was that there's more to dancing than just getting to the right place, no matter how you do it. And the fourth tip was one that I created, which has always been one of my favorite themes, and it is to demonstrate timing. And timing is a critical aspect of calling that I fear, and I haven't actually attended very many dances in the last couple of years, but certainly for the previous 20, I can assure you that timing was a disappearing art, both on the part of callers and on the part of dancers. In the first place, you cannot have good timing unless you are absolutely certain of your choreography. And however you get there, whether by sight or modules or memorizing, however you do it, if you don't know exactly where every dancer in the square is going to be and is going to be next, then your timing will be poor. And if the timing is poor, you are not dancing. Forgive me for intensity of my feeling on this subject, but it's my personal judgment as I observe our activity that one of the greatest errors we have made is to abandon the importance of timing. As I watch it take place, there is a huge problem with knowing choreography well enough so that the timing can be correct. I don't see it very often. The interesting thing for me in this program that we did, and the reason I'm particularly fascinated by this subject, is that we thought there might be 10 or 12 squares show up at that hour in the morning on Saturday without any choreography being taught. The place was packed, wall-to-wall people, out the door. They still were dancing in the halls. The dancers were clearly loving that program. They came up afterward in droves and told us how much they appreciated it. They wished their caller had told them in class many of the things that we were talking about. We were overwhelmed with the reception we got. And they had us do the same program for the next 3 years. We did it 4 years in a row. And the hall, the next year was even more crowded than it was the first year. And the program continued to pack the hall wherever we put it. The message I get from this is that our customers would really like us to show them how to dance and to give them some practice, some training, and some guidance in how to be better dancers. Many of the people told us, we've never heard these things before. Nobody ever told us that. They didn't tell us that we were interacting with other people and how we did that made a difference in what kind of a dancer we were. I'm sorry to hear that. I don't have any trouble at all believing it. And I unfortunately believe that our emphasis on that aspect of dancing in our classes has grown even smaller over the last 20 years than it was then. I'm talking generally about the concepts and the importance, and the person who knows the details and has a whole lot to say about particular aspects of this is sitting to my right, Jon Jones.
My name's Marshall Flippo. Except Marshall's voice is, my name's Marshall Flippo. That's the way he's having a problem with his vocal cords right now. Thank you very much, Jim. Jim has tons of experience with regard to what we're talking about here today, or what our subject is. In the handout that he gave you, I went through and I had this, he sent it to me some time ago, and I went through it. And in one place he says, and I have highlighted it, it's also nice to applaud the caller's performance and the pleasure of dancing in your square. How many of you teach your dancers that they should applaud at the end of a tip? Apparently the rest of you don't do that. You ignore that fact. Now, a long time ago, a proponent of this type of thing was Bob Osgood, and he talked about it numerous times. And it's also in the caller teacher manual that he produced a long time ago. And Deborah and I have talked about it at different times and in different places. We had we made one particular individual very upset, and Bob Osgood wouldn't do that. Well, I made copies of what Bob Bosgood had printed in his books, and I highlighted it and I sent it to this person. I did get an apology because I didn't realize that and I had forgotten about it, or perhaps whatever. And his attitude was, I don't want a caller telling me anything. Well, we had a dancer down in our home, and we had a meeting of association officers and caller officers, and there's one of those persons in there said, I'm not going to put up with a caller telling me anything. And I said, well, you're going to have to quit dancing then. He said, why? I said, well, caller tells you every step to take on the dance floor. And if you're not going to let a caller tell you anything, you're going to have to quit car dancing. Well, I didn't think about it that way. I was talking about all this other stuff, you know. But he was a very poor dancer. He had been trained by somebody who did not teach styling and timing. They taught roughness, so to speak. And it's very rough. And it's very difficult to try to dance in a square with somebody. But I'll go back to the point that there are 3 reasons why dancers should applaud at the end of a tip. Now, a lot of times they'll applaud after the patter call. But after the singing call, they don't. Here's all we callers see. For the benefit of the tape, I turned my back to the audience and I bent over. That's all we see at the end of the tip. As soon as they finish the singing call, the last note, even before the tagline is finished, they've already joined hands in the square and humped over. If you haven't observed that, then start looking. Now, here's another thing about it. When we got some callers to encourage their dancers to applaud, the dancers were applauding, and the callers over here messing with the amplifier or the computer or whatever it might happen to be, and not paying any attention to the dancers. I don't blame them. I wouldn't applaud that caller either. Whoever's being applauded should recognize the fact that it's happening. We teach it in our class. And you can't believe the enthusiasm that it has created in the club that Deborah's now club caller for. I had it in my clubs. I had 4 clubs at one time. But then I got away from that and started doing a lot of traveling, and I haven't had a regular club since. But since Deborah and I got married and she moved to Texas, she had never been a club caller out in California, but she took on a club that they were just practically begging her to be their caller. And so she has done that, and we teach this in our class. And at the end of one of her singing calls, they stand there and applaud and look in her direction and applaud it. And it's a really great feeling. Now, there's 3 brothers of callers, the Sigmund brothers from up in Wisconsin. Some of you may know who I'm talking about. Noah Sigmund and his 2 brothers, Lincoln and Jed. And they've been doing some traveling together, and they came through Texas and they had called other dances. And they called about 6 or 8 dances on their trip. And when they got back home, they wrote Deborah a message and told her that they had more enthusiasm and fun at the Texas Readers Dance at her club because of the appreciation that the dancers showed to them at the end of every tip. And it really made a big difference. And I've referred it back to the first time I ever went to Australia to call a dance. And after the first tip that I called, the applause from the dancers was so great, it was embarrassing to me as an old country boy, but it was a tremendous feeling. I had to walk off the stage before they would, I had disappeared before they would quit applauding. And that was such a great feeling. I was this high off the floor as a caller, you know. You can't help but do that. Can you imagine what it would be like to go to a Barbra Streisand concert and not applaud after each song? Be dead silence? Can you imagine the atmosphere that that would create? I feel it's the same way in the square dance world. We've gotten away from it. And it's not the dancer's fault, it's us callers' fault for not teaching them what they need to know, in my opinion. There's 3 reasons that you should applaud, that the dancers should applaud. You had a good time. You enjoyed dancing with the people in the square. Or you're glad that it's over. Those are 3 reasons to applaud, and we tell the dancers that, and we get the response back, and it's tremendous. It really is. Keep that in mind. as you go along and in your teaching. Jim also has another comment. He has other comments, and this one is, another of those troublesome calls is Ferris wheel. Now, the trouble with Ferris wheel, if you've really observed what happens from a two-faced line with the men on the end and doing a Ferris wheel, the man will cut diagonally across the center of the square to go to the spot that he needs to be, and he will back drag that woman around into position. That's not the way it's written. That ain't got anything to do with good styling. The first part of a Ferris wheel is the half of a couple circulate. And then those people in the middle should touch hands, whoever it might be, and then complete the wheel and deal. How many of you teach how many beats and dancing steps it takes to do every call? Any of you? Do you teach that in your class? Then you ought to start tomorrow or today if you have a class tonight, whatever it might happen to be. We teach the number of steps and dancing steps it takes to do every single call. If you're doing your job as a caller, if you read the CALLERLAB definitions, it not only has the command examples, which is the new format, and then the definition of the call and the ending formation, it also has styling and timing, and in many of them there are other comments that come along with it. That's all part of the definition. If you're not doing that, you're not doing your job as a caller, in my opinion. Another comment Jim made, you have a similar situation with recycle. Dancers doing recycle, the man cuts across to where he's supposed to be, drags a woman around, and she turns around and faces other people. I was in another country on the dance floor dancing, and I went to a class. It was the graduation night of this particular class. And the caller was up teaching. Of course, the last call on the mainstream program is recycle. And he was going to teach recycle. I'm up on the floor dancing. And he said, I'm going to teach you how to do the last call that's on the list, and it's called recycle. He said, now there's a caller on the floor that won't agree with what I'm going to do. And I knew he was talking about me. But he said, here's the way I teach it. Girls do a U-turn back and wheel and deal. That ain't the definition of recycle. But that's the way he taught it, and that's the way his dancers danced it. Yeah, I said, why don't you half-side shim and do that? Oh no, we don't want to do that. Well, you ought to. And I have a comment in one of mine, learn both positions. Now these handouts that we've given you, that's not toilet paper. It's not trash. It's made for you to take home and read and study and get some good points out of it, because we made some good points in here. Jim says, accuracy in your dancing. Gosh, that's so important to do that. Accuracy in your dancing. In every line, touch hands, and that includes ocean waves. Square dancing is take a hand, turn it loose, take a hand, turn it loose, touch a hand, let it go, touch a hand, let it go, constantly. Do you teach your dancers that they must have their hands all the time in ready dancing position? I see some heads shaking up and down. Very good, thank you. They should be. God, every time I see dancers, they do a call and they drop their hand, do a call and they drop their hand, do it again. And you have to hunt those hands. You have to, sometimes the man has to reach down or the woman has to reach down and get a hold of the hand and do it. You know, something else that bugs me in doing a boys run, the lady will reach around behind her. I've seen ladies reach around, they've had their hand back here, they want me to take their hand from there and come around. I don't take it. They say, well, what I do? Okay, my hand's up here. This is a couple hand hold. It's not down here. I've seen people promenade that the men drop their hands. If Deborah was in here, I'd demonstrate, but I'm not going to be there. Their hands down below their waist. I had a lady, she told a whole group of others, she was helping me, Deborah was out of town, and she was helping me demonstrate a styling session, and she said, besides that, it's embarrassing for you to hold my hand down like this. They're not supposed to be there, they're supposed to be up in ready dancing position, dancing around, guiding, gliding around the floor. Men should treat ladies like they're delicate crystal, and they could break at any moment. I've seen men treat women like you, dish rag. coffee grinding on the floor. God, horrible. It's not their fault. It goes back to the people behind the microphone. And it all falls back on us as callers. And it's a reflection on us as a callers as to how the people dance that we have taught. It's always been a good feeling to me that people tell me, we can tell the dancers that you have taught. And I took great pride in that because I taught everything that they needed to know. Now, I have said in my notes that CALLERLAB recognizes that there are regional differences in styling, but it does not recognize roughness of any kind. And that in our class and in our club, and Deborah and I both feel the same way, we teach everything exactly as it's written in the CALLERLAB definitions. That's just the way we believe it. And I've done a lot of research, and I found out that the hand positioning and that type of thing, that the way CALLERLAB has it written is the only way it's ever been written and adopted by a national or an international organization. Now, like I said, there are areas that disagree. Up in Jim's area, they dance to forearm. In the Dallas-Fort Worth area, when I first learned to dance, everything that we did was forearm holds, ocean waves, and everything. Then it came along later that somebody suggested that, give me a hand, that this arm wrestling grip was better, with hands up. So we started doing that. And then CALLERLAB came along and came out with a recommendation that it be palm to palm with the cross palm position. And so we've adopted that in our area. And that's exactly the way that Deborah and I teach. And because we like it and we believe in it, and we are faithful to CALLERLAB in that regard. Now, we had a caller in our area that decided 2 years ago, because he started calling advanced, that we should all be doing handshake position on everything, whatever it might happen to be. No forearms, scoot backs and turn throughs and everything was all done. Everything was handshake, ocean waves and the whole bit. And he got about 4 clubs to agree with him, and you can't believe the darn mess it has created in our area. It is a real mess. And that's one reason that I'm glad that we now have open carry law in Texas. You teach it wrong, bleh, we go get another one here. Next. But that really creates a problem. Now, we have gone to numerous national conventions over the years. And when we get up on the dance floor to dance, I spend half of my time trying to figure out how I'm going to join hands with that person in front of me. I just don't think it's right. I made the statement in 1974 at our first convention. This came up and it was discussed, and we had callers from all across the country that said, oh, good Lord, no, we're not going to discuss that situation. No way. And my comment was, you mean to tell me that you are the great leaders of the square dance world and you're not willing to make a decision? Well, they finally did, but then they eventually recognized that there are regional differences because we didn't want everybody to get mad at each other. But going to a national convention is a real problem. And how many of you have been to a national convention? And you've danced, you've experienced that problem, have you not? It's just a constant, look, you feel like a robot. I do, because you don't know what to do. Well, we got some people down at home that want to dance the hand positioning situation, and when they come to Deborah's dance, everybody's in hands up. If they want to hold their hands, they're going to have to join them and get the hands up, because that's just the way we teach. And Jim has another comment here. Find something that works for you and then try to be accurate every time. Find something that works for you and then try to be accurate every time. That's a very profound statement. And we need to do that as often and all the time. We constantly teach, not at the club, but during class. We have angels come in. How many of you have angels come to your class? You know what I'm talking about? Everybody know what I'm talking about when I say angels? Okay, feelings. You have to retrain the angels nearly every time. We're not having to do that in the Texas Readers Club at home anymore, except for an angel that comes that hasn't been in 2 years. Then we got to retrain those people, whomever it might happen to be. Now, we teach in our class that when a man swings a lady, she becomes his partner. That's automatic. Should be. And it's his responsibility to place her in the proper position, whatever that might happen to be. Well, I use an old call. When we teach swing the first night of class. The very first night. Because you can do so much with swing. And there ain't nothing like swinging with a good swinger. Whether it be square dancing or otherwise, you know. But swinging is so nice if it's done correctly. If it's not, it's horrible. And I have had, when doing a singing call, I have had ladies come at me with their hand already up over their head because they know I'm going to twirl her instead of swing. Men take the corner and they don't move. They just bring her around and give a coffee grinder and then go run to a promenade. That ain't a swing. That's a mess. I don't know. It doesn't have a name. And so we teach swing the first night and we emphasize it all the time. And I use an old routine that's been around a long, long time. You got a ring, put it in a ring, break the ring with a corner swing, and you put her on the right and go on again and circle to the left. She becomes your partner if you place her in the right position and you circle left. Well, this angel came in the other night and he hadn't been there for the last 2 years, and he swung his corner and he put her back over on the left-hand side. Well, he was standing there trying to hold hands with a man over here, and he didn't want to do that. So had to retrain that angel to put that lady in the right position. And we have dancers that go out and dance in other clubs that everybody in our area doesn't teach like Deborah and I do. They don't teach as much as we do as far as styling and timing is concerned. And they say, how do we avoid doing some of the things that we see, that we encounter on the dance floor? This Hungarian do-si-do thing. This arm around do-si-do. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Everybody, shake your head if you know what I'm talking about. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Okay. Over in Europe, they named it, gave it a name, and they called it hidey-ho. You know, if the caller called hidey-ho, then you could do that. If you didn't, then you don't do that. But we beg the European dancers to not permit the American bad dancing to incorporate into their activity over there. Please don't let it go. Keep it out. You got it going. Yeah, Chris is over here shaking his she's from England. Yeah, no, we don't want it in England either. That keep this stupid American stuff over there across the water. We don't want it again. And but anyway, they said, how do we defend ourselves in doing that? And I said, put your hands behind your back and turn your shoulder. That should tell the man that you don't want to do that. I said, if they insist, you're a lady, look him right in the eye and say, my husband is really mean and he doesn't want you doing that, so don't ever do it again. If he was rude to her, I think she has the right to return it back and say, don't do that, don't do me that way. They said, well, what do we do with these men who don't want to swing? They want to take us and give a coffee grinder. We teach them how to jerk their hand down, hard, if they don't want to do that. If the man starts up with a hand, pull it down. And it should be a signal to the man to don't do that anymore, or don't do it with me. And I said, then look them right in the eye and say, you cheated me out of a swing. I've done that with ladies, like I said. I've had some come at me, they're ordering the twirl. And when they get to the promenade position, I look at them, I said, you cheated me out of a swing. I don't like to miss swings. If we don't want the dancers to do it, why do we call it? We call swing all the time. Even gotten to the point on singing calls that many of us, a lot of times, we don't say swing after the weave the ring. We expect them to swing and then promenade. Well, we got dancers nowadays that they ain't doing it. They just won't swing. They just meet their partner and promenade. Our dancers, if the caller doesn't say promenade, they meet their partner and they'll stop. If he just keeps on singing, he don't say swing or promenade or anything like that, the whole floor stopped. Uh-oh. Had callers say, boy, we found out we better say what we're supposed to, what we want them to do, if they won't do it. I said, that's the way they're trained. You do what the caller says, if they don't tell you, don't do it. Don't try to do anything else. But we teach our dancers how to defend themselves against rough dancing and awkward dancing and this type of thing. One of my pet peeves, and it is, and I see it, I saw it last night at the dance, I saw it Saturday night at the dance that we had, is a courtesy turn, the hand position in the wrong place. Would you help me? Just a moment. Kathy, thank you very much. I see this all the time. We're going to do a right and left through. You're my partner. You're my partner. We've got a family. We do a right and left through, and we come by and we take the girl's hand. Stay over here just a minute. And the lady will hand her hand to you like this, or to the man, and he will take it like that and do a courtesy turn. Look where the hand is. Is that awkward on your wrist? It could hurt, couldn't it? Could. She started to hand me her hand correctly, and I made her do that other thing just to demonstrate what it is. But if you do a right and left through, the man's hand should go here, and hers should be placed in it. This is the position up here. It's not down here. It should be up here. She should crook her fingers over mine and never squeeze tight with the hand. Never. There's never a reason to squeeze tight with a hand. Our thumbs are loose, but if she's got her fingers here, she's got a rigid arm, and all I've got to do is lead her around and then go immediately to the couple hand hold or whatever it might happen to be. Thank you, Kathy, very much. Those are the type of things that you've got to get out on the floor and demonstrate. And if you see a dancer having a problem, go to them and help them and dance with them. We had a lady over at the dance the other night that came to our workshop class, which is 7 to 8 weeks after we finish a new dancer class. Came from another club and wanted to join, and we did. They were doing all of these things incorrectly. And I got another lady, and Deborah and I, and we got out on the floor and got with them, and we showed them how to do it correctly. Then we have the sets in order basic mainstream manuals. Do everybody know what I'm talking about? Okay. Paul Cote's got them in his booth down here. If you haven't seen that, go look. It's got photos in it. It's got descriptions in it. We have those for the new days. We sell them. We buy them and we tell them how much they cost, $2 or $2.50, whatever it might happen to be. And every one of our new dancers gets that book and they take it home. We have a lesson plan. Deborah makes up a lesson plan of what calls she's going to teach each week. She gives it to every one of the dancers. They can look in that book and they can review what we're going to do next week. Or they can look at it and review what we did this week that they missed. Because dancers are going to miss. Most of them won't attend every class. They'll miss something and they need to catch up on it. These are the type of things that we as callers, if we do all of these things, then we're doing our job. If we leave off any one of them, then we have not done the dancers properly as far as I'm concerned. Now, a number of years ago, the National Convention used to have a styling session every day in one of the main halls. And I've seen very well-known callers teaching these sessions. And there would be 7,500 squares on the floor to learn the styling. They would have a square to demonstrate good styling and that type of thing. Well, some of those callers quit going to National Convention, and they finally got to where they didn't have them at all. They didn't have styling sessions. And I don't know what brought it about, but at the National Convention, the last time it was in Louisville, Kentucky, Deborah and I were asked if we would teach and do a styling session on 2 of the days, on Friday and Saturday. We said, sure. So we got Vernon and Kayla, and we got a square of dancers from down our area that were very good dancers. And they were our demonstration square out on the floor. And Deborah was dancing, I think, with Justin Russell. And and I'm up on the stage teaching and talking about dancing and how to do it. And we'd have the demonstration square show the various things that I was talking about. We had 35 squares in that first session in Louisville, Kentucky on Friday. Saturday, we had 40 squares that came in on Saturday afternoon for the styling. Well, then we did the styling in Spokane, Washington at the National Convention. But they had it in a small hall. It was a small room. It was like one of these meeting rooms down here. We had to move the tables. Mike System helped, and his partner helped us with that. We had to move the tables and some of the chairs for two couples to get up and demonstrate what we were doing with regard to styling. That ain't teaching styling in my mind. You've got to have dancer participations. They've got to feel it. They've got to understand it. They got to know what it's all about. So we complained about that to Spokane, that was not good enough. We needed it to be in one of the main halls where we could have all the people that wanted to. We had a hall jammed full 2 days with people, but they couldn't participate. Then we were asked to do the styling at the National in Oklahoma City. And I made a request, and it was part of the stipulation. If it wasn't in one of the 3 main dancing halls, I was going to walk out and not do it. Well, they had it in one of the 3 main dancing halls. We had 25 squares of dancers that came in. That's telling us that people are hungry for this type of thing. We did the styling at the National Convention in Des Moines, Iowa this past year. We had a room that would hold about 20 squares. We had 35 squares on the floor. They were kind of crowded. But that's telling us that people want this type of thing. They want to know how to be a better dancer. And we callers need to do our job. I strongly believe in it, and I don't think there's anybody that can convince me to be otherwise in this regard, because it is just so very good to do. Now, if you look at the material, the handout that I had for you back there in the back, the first page is just comments that I have on my own. The second page is square dance styling, and it talks about exactly how you're supposed to do the various types of calls. I wish we had a whole bunch of time where we could get everybody up on the floor and just demonstrate all of these types of things, because it's so very easy to do and to get it done right. We have called, I have called, and I have seen it called. Alley man left, Alamo style, right to your partner in balance. Y'all, what I did for the benefit of the tape, I'm standing on my left foot and I kicked my right foot up in the air. That's not a balance. That's called stand on one foot and kick the other. That's all it is. They ain't got anything to do with balance. How many of you round dance? What is a balance in round dance? It's either sideways or it's forward and back, right? And the hands are up and ready dancing business. Ain't down here. They're not in your pocket. A balance is step, touch, back, touch. It doesn't make any difference which foot you step on, but it's a 4-count maneuver to do. That's what a balance is. Teach the dancers how to do it properly. And you can't believe how well and how good it looks to be able to do that, or to watch the floor do that, and all of them doing it together. It's so nice to do. The first time I ever called in Sacramento, California was for their festival out there. It had a hall, 200 squares on the floor. God, I was scared to death. This old country boy from Texas, I had never seen anything like that, you know. I had seen some, but I wasn't the caller. And I got up on the stage, and I put them in a line of 4, danced forward and back, and they took 8 counts to do it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I thought, wow, to my mind. And then I said star through. Every hand went up and came down at the same time, and I said, wow. They had been trained so well. They were stylish dancers. Very, very good. And I had a ball. I thoroughly enjoyed calling to them. Now, one thing that creates bad styling is bad timing on the caller's part. How many of you heard callers? Or how many of you done it yourself? Don't make any difference. Heads lead right and circle to the line of 4 and the break round out, dance forward and back and a right and left through. Or dance forward and back and pass through and you wheel it. They ain't got forward yet. And we done said go forward and back, which should take 8 counts. And we've given them 1. Open carry law have created. That's the type of thing that we're talking about. Dancers will normally dance the way you call to them. I used to observe years ago in my early calling days, Les Gocher would come through and call a dance in our area, and we'd have a hall full of dancers. He was a hash caller deluxe, and nobody could touch him. And we had a thoroughly good time doing it. Then the following month, Ed Gilmore would come in to call a dance. We'd have a hall full of dancers. Ed Gilmore was a timing master with his calls. Every call was given at the exact right amount of time, and you had time to dance every one of them. 2 completely, totally different types of dances. And I thought, boy, if I could find somewhere about halfway between, I'd be running just about right between those 2 callers. And so that's the way I geared my calling career, is to try to be somewhere in the middle, but to give the dancers plenty of time to execute each of the calls the way they're supposed to be done. But not draggy. You don't have, if it takes 8 beats to go forward and back, you don't want to give them 10 or 12 or whatever it might happen to be. We count for the dancers. Every call that we do, we count the number of beats and we give them the call and start counting. And you'd be surprised how quickly they eventually get to where they can do it in the right number of steps. And with the timing, they may start out taking forever to do it. Like on doing a right and a left through from a static square, supposed to take 8 beats. Well, they may take 10 or 12 before they get done, especially if they are older people, like me.
Go easy.
Huh?
Go easy.
I know. That's the reason I moved over here, and I don't want Jim to hit me because he's older than I am. But I was asked yesterday, and we were talking, and Deborah and I was standing there. I don't remember who all was standing there, but this guy looked at me and he said, "You're not 80, are you, John?" I said, "Not anymore." I was last year, but I'm 81 years old. And I can't imagine myself at this age going out to begin to learn to square dance. It might take me forever to learn. The older we get, the less we can learn. The brain starts dying. And there are older people, the majority that we're getting are senior citizens. In most cases, sometimes we get we have a couple in our class this past fall. He was 40 and she was 37. Or they're in the club now. And we thought, wow, we got some young people. That ain't young. That's darn near middle age. But they learned a whole lot quicker than everybody else. He was we found out he was a professional ballroom dancer, so boy, he could learn the maneuvers and he's a beautiful dancer. But in doing the calls, they would take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 on the right and the left there. But we keep counting. We're supposed to do that in 8. Ready to go. They eventually get it to where they can do it in exactly 8 beats. Grand Square is the most screwed up call we've ever had. It ain't the dancer's fault. It's the caller's fault. It's those of us behind the microphone. Because we haven't teached it, we haven't stressed it, we don't emphasize it all the time. Can't do that? No. And then it takes 4 steps on each side, not 1.5. Or round the corner, sides face grand square, and head men to go. They already beat you. They ain't no prize for being first in doing a grand square or anything of that nature. And you can't believe the dancers the other night. We were doing teacup chain. They should be able to do it in 32 beats as well. but it's a little more complicated than a grand square, and they were taking 36 to 38 beats to get it done. It's hard to fit it in a singing call when they take that much time, because you don't have time to get the phrasing of the singing call back. Like we told them it should be able to do this in 32 beats. It was a plus club. We worked with them on that whole tip. You can't believe the applause that we got when they hit it right on 32 beats on doing a teacup chain. Yay, we made it. It's a good feeling for them to be able to do the calls in the right number of steps. Teach everything. You have to teach them everything.
And they love it.
And they like it. They like what the man say this morning? People are begging for structure. They're looking for it. If you look at the last page of the handout that we gave you, it's called Leaving the Nest, and Deborah put this together. She compiled this information from other sources and put it all together, helping the dancers when they graduate from the club, what to expect at the club, what to expect when they go out to another dance. Take that home with you and look at it and go over it. Feel free to use any part of this that you desire in any regard, printing and using whatever it may take to help you with your square dancing and helping the dancers learn to be better dancers and master your craft, okay? Got any questions from anybody or comments? We're open, please share. Oh my God, all right, here, let me bring the microphone. State your name and what state you're from and go to it, Leo.
Hi, my name is Leo Cat. I'm from San Diego, California. My question is, I'm kind of in an interesting position because I don't follow the normal club organizational structure. I'm a color run club. And I'm new to the area, so I'm building a dancer base from the existing dancer base. And I'm seeing a lot of the issues that you're talking about. I'll use Load the Boat, for example. I have yet to see anybody do the handholds on the points on Load the Boat. For 3 years, I preach it and I preach it and I preach it. And so that leads me to my question, which is, when you are not in the regular space of the dancers all the time, you're not their teacher, you're not their, you're just not. How do you negotiate that? How do you get them to move over to what they should be doing?
I can tell you what I did with a club that I had at home that was a Call a Run club, and we had people come in from all other clubs in the area. The first rule I made is they had to be a member of an area mainstream club, or they couldn't come dance, they couldn't join this club, because I didn't want people to say I was stealing their dancers from them. So we came in, this was several years ago, and we have a hall in Fort Worth that's owned by us square dancers, and it's a beautiful hall, and it'll dance 50 squares. We had 45 squares sold out when we got it, and I said, here's how we dance. And I showed, I would demonstrate as need be, and I said, I don't know what you're doing in your club, doesn't make any difference, but here is how we dance. I led them into it in that regard. They said, here's what we do. So you might try that. You have to be diplomatic about it. You don't want to run somebody off or make them mad, but you say, so we can all be dancing the same way, we hold our hands the same way, we do the same thing with everybody, let's all do this, and here's what we want to do. Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Rick Gutter from North Idaho. I just wanted your take on, I run into quite a few times older ladies that have vertigo and they can't take the swing. So what do you do in a situation like that?
Everybody heard what he said, that ladies that have vertigo, if you've ever had vertigo, you know exactly what he's talking about. I've had it, and boy, you can't do nothing. You lose all sense of balance and everything else. They should have a badge that don't swing me.
Yeah, sometimes that doesn't work. You know, the people don't read it. So,
Well,
do you teach them anything else, or?
when they get up in the square, they need to tell everybody in the square, don't swing me, gentlemen, because I have vertigo, I can't do that. And then they need to respect that. So if we come, here's another thing, pardon me?
You don't swing me. You don't swing me, I just plant my feet. I walk right where I'm supposed to be and I plant my feet, because if you swing me, you're gonna pick me up off the floor.
This is Bobby from Arizona. And why do you not swing?
I had some brain surgery, and my left side is weak, and if you swing me, like I said, you're gonna pick me up off the floor.
Okay.
Square dancing is a contact sport, so I can dance, because I got somebody's hand.
Come here just a minute. I'm not gonna swing you.
You're doggone right you are.
You have a pistol in your hand. Is this what Here's what we would do. If I was going to swing you as my corner to promenade. No, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Which way are we headed?
This is promenade. You see what I did? I just stood and held her. She can't swing. Go ahead and sit back down, Bobby. Thank you. Now, here's the thing about it. If a person can't swing, don't turn into the promenade. Y'all come up here. Come here this minute, Bobby. Y'all are up here. Come on up, Rick. All right. We're going to swing and promenade, and y'all are going to swing. Ready? Go.
Well, I didn't see the rest of the square.
Did you see what happened? Did you see what it did? Okay. They were swinging, and I took her and started to promenade, and I'm right here on them. If you're not going to swing, and everybody else is, kill 6 beats standing still until the swing is over with, and I don't want somebody crowding up behind me and I'm swinging. I may come around with an elbow. Or it could be dangerous. Somebody could get hurt in that regard. It's the same thing. We got a lot of dancers that will not swing after weave the ring and before promenade. They just walk into the promenade and they're walking into the couple up in front of them that's swinging. Teach them, if you're not going to swing, stand still for 6 beats and wait. Then you go into the promenade. It's our responsibility as callers to do that. Anybody else? Comment? Yes. Name and state.
Seth Levine from here. So I have new dancers, really fresh new dancers right now. Some of them are still scared, and I have figured out ways to teach them, but I want to know more what your way is. The nuclear option to teach them to relax and let go, so that in a right and left through, for example, they're not spinning their opposite in the wrong direction.
As I said before, square dancing is take a hand, let it go. Take a hand, turn it loose, take a hand, turn it loose, touch a hand, let it go, touch a hand, let it go, constantly. Never gripping tight with the hand. We teach them not to do that. Every call that we can do, we do it without grabbing the hand. I was dancing the other night at Deborah's Dance on the floor, and there was a lady, she was about this high. And she had to be at least as old as I am and maybe older. And she was a bit humped over. And she moved like this in dancing. And I went to do an alley man. She was my corner. I went to do an alley man left with her. I thought my arm was in a vice. She grabbed it so hard and so tight and jerked on it, yeah. And I thought, wow, this little lady is strong. Yeah. It was hard for me to get. I said, please don't hold my hand so tight. Please don't squeeze so tight. I had to tell her and ask her not to do that. And I think you just have to keep working on this over and over and over again. If you see it happening on the floor and dancers are doing it, go out there and at the intermission, at your break between tips, go out there and dance with them. And we had to do some, like I said, we had some people the other night doing that. And I got out on the floor with them, Deborah and I did, and we showed them what we do and how we do. And they have now become better, much better dancers because of working with them. And just keep on, don't give up on it.
It's also important in your first teach to include these features, the styling characteristics, and how to do it correctly. Don't wait until after you taught the mechanics of the call. Teach the styling right along with the initial presentation. We don't have any immediate other questions. Let me insert 2 entertaining, or I think entertaining. First one is swinging is an art. And one of the interesting observations is that one of the best swinging partners I ever encountered, Joanne, is very good, but Earl Johnson's wife, Marion, has the best swing in the whole square dancing. And the last time I swung with her was 40 years ago. I will never forget it. She left an indelible memory. Swinging is an art, and to do it well is something of which you should be very proud. The other interesting observation, we mentioned the first CALLERLAB convention in '74, there was one issue that overrode the entire convention, and it was the question of hands up or hands down on terms. The Texas group came loaded for bear because they knew that the only way to do a hand turn was hands up. New England had 3 or 4 years earlier been torn with both forms, and we had made a group, a regional decision that we would use a forearm for all arm turns. Those two came head to head at the first CALLERLAB convention in 1974. And the lobby was Texas over here and New England over there. And they went back and forth. I well remember 2:30 in the morning, Al Brundage and half of Texas standing there face to face. The discussions almost overran the entire first CALLERLAB convention. That issue pestered us for 10 years. We continued to fight about it. I came out of a board meeting one time when I overheard one of the board members walking behind me suggest that Jack Lazary should resign from CALLERLAB. Jack Lazary? Are you out of your mind? But Jack was from Florida, and in Florida they were doing forearm turn. It became that much of an issue, and we eventually, I'm not sure how we finally, we didn't draw straws. It was more likely we drew weapons. But it pestered us for a very long time, and we finally had to acknowledge that if we didn't agree that regional preferences could be accepted, we were probably going to destroy CALLERLAB. It's hard to imagine that that issue could be of such impact, but it really was. Styling was a crucial factor, and as I look back on it, it's hard to believe that we were so committed and so intense that we spent hours in board meetings on that subject. Crazy. There are better things to talk about in square dancing.
And we didn't have open carry law at that time.
For which I am grateful.
Yes,
I'm Andreth Davis from Salida, Colorado. I've only been dancing a few years, and I didn't start dancing until I was already a great-grandmother several times over. I have a little bit of the vertigo. Swinging is fine, as long as the guy holds on to me. But could somebody please tell me, do we or don't we on Weave the Ring? It drives me crazy. You come at one guy and he takes both of your hands and whips you around, and then you come to the next guy and he's got his hands behind the back. Come to the next guy, he's got one hand up and he flips you around. You come to the next guy and he's got a hand here, and if you don't have your hand up, he whacks you in the boob. Okay. It just drives me crazy. And you know, I'm a new dancer, and they say, weave the ring, don't touch a thing. Well, that hasn't happened yet. Okay, that's my pet peeve.
Amen.
open carry law. No, I think that is so rude. And I would have no problem at all going telling any man, you don't do that anymore. Now, you may have to whip me, but we're going outside. And that ain't gonna happen anymore. Don't you ever do that again.
That's why we teach styling.
Yeah, and if that were to happen to my wife, what you talked about, if some man hit her on the boob and did that, he'd have to whip me. Because I'd be right in his face. And I think you as a woman, you have every right to take a step back and slap the thunder out of him.
I've done that.
That's my,
I have done that in the square.
Wait a minute, wait a minute.
We want to hear this.
I have reached across the square and slapped a man across the face for doing something I had told him not to. And he never did it again.
Thank you, Linda. Linda's from California. And, but I think a woman has every right to do that. That's rude. It's awful. It should never happen on a square dance floor. Now, after I'd been calling for 30 years, I decided that was long enough. I need to get out. So I retired. This was way back in 1986. And I stayed out for 18 months. And I got invited to come to Houston. The National Convention was in Houston in 1987. They asked me if I would come and narrate the fashion show, and I said, yeah, that'd be fun. So I thought, well, if I'm going, I may as well register as a caller. So I did, and I got back into calling again. But like I said, I had 4 clubs up to that point. I've not had a regular club since, because I didn't want to do that. I wanted to travel. I did lots of traveling. I retired from my job. It took me 32 years to get good enough to become a full-time traveling caller. Yeah, y'all believe that? 32 years to go. No, I worked for 32 years, and then I finally retired from there, and then I started traveling as a full-time caller. And so the first dance I went to in my local area, after I started back, it was at a caller association dance, and multiple callers up, and this one caller got up and started a singing call, and he called Alley Man Left and weaved the ring, and I always put my hands behind my back. And I'm weaving the ring, and the women were hitting at me as I went around, alternating hands, because they had gotten in a habit of doing that with the men coming around and doing, that ain't part of weaving the ring, and I was ducking. You know, what in the world is going on?
John, thank the folks. It's time for us to quit.
Yeah, and there was another caller in the square said, John, that's new since you've been out. I said, boy, we're in deep trouble. If that's new on the square, if that's all we've got to do, is to dream up something like that, people hitting at each other, going around and weaving the ring. I think it's rude and shouldn't be done, and I don't mind. I bet it's a caller. Don't do that. I'm serious. Yeah. Don't put up with it.
Thank you.
And we appreciate you being here.
We surely do. It's been an interesting session. We hope you share with us the feeling that styling is an important part of square dancing. Encourage people to dance with style. And thank you for coming.